What is the most unhinged death story you've ever heard? The death of a steel factory worker up the road from where I worked at the time. He got pinched at the waist in the machine that moved the heavy steel molds around the factory. If they moved the machine to release him, his innards would spill out, so they kept him there trying to find a solution for 10 hours but weren't able to. He was in shock and conscious long enough for his family to come and say their goodbyes before he passed, still pinched in the machine. It stuck in my mind because I remember my friend who worked there telling me how they curtained off that area, but the rest of the plant kept running business as usual. Some backpacking cross-country skiers set out to ski the Continental Divide Trail in Yellowstone National Park. With no map and fresh snow falling, they skied into a thermal area without knowing where they were. The snow was so heavy that it covered the boiling hot spring, and one of the skiers went right over one, falling in up to his neck. Burned up to his neck with scalding hot boiling sulfur water, his friends pulled him to a tent they had set up where one of his friends stayed with him and another started the ski out of the backcountry for help. In incredible pain and cut off from humanity, the victim laid in a tent writhing in horrible pain. Help came about 18 hours after the incident, and while he held on most of this time, sadly, he did not make it. The Nutty Putty incident. You've got to be utterly unhinged to willingly crawl into a place like that. Also Isadora Duncan, that someone ended up killing himself because he kept several containers of feces in the house. He was addicted to the smell and would get high off of it. He died because of the fumes itself, causing him to slowly die from noxious gas. It's like getting addicted to the smell of gasoline and leaving it out and around your home. There is a direct narrative link between Archduke Franz Ferdinand's driver getting lost and Mitsuyasu Maino, a Japanese softcore porn actor, 1/2 in downtown Tokyo. Guy in Nanjing South Railway Station tried to jump from one platform to the next when he realized he was on the wrong one. Couldn't get onto the platform before the train arrived. Ended up pinched between the train and the platform, about a 10-centimeter space at best. I was speed dating and this girl came in dressed very nice, but only half her mouth was working. I asked if she had dental work earlier, as it looked like she had anesthesia. She said, "No, but I got hit by a bus while coming here." That was an awkward 3 minutes. She passed out later in the speed dating and the ambulance came and took her away. I got a group email later that she had died. Elderly couple drove off a mountain. Wife was killed on impact. Husband managed to crawl out of the wreckage and scramble back up the mountainside to flag down some help. Died of a heart attack when he reached the roadside. Guess because I ran across it recently, but in early 1942, just after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese were occupying islands in the South Pacific, and they sent a destroyer to one island that was administered by Germany. They found about 75 nuns, and a few priests, all Germans, working with the locals as teachers or medical staff. The destroyer captain messaged Tokyo to ask what to do with them. The message came back: eliminate them. They sailed out into the ocean without telling these nuns where they were going, and then one by one, brought them out on the stern, shot them, and tossed them overboard, along with 2 Chinese orphan toddlers who happened to be with them. Keep in mind, these were Germans, ostensibly Japan's allies at the time. The news of what happened to them didn't get back to Germany until after the war. To me, this story describes a country and a culture that had simply gone insane. The SL-1 incident. An early prototype for a portable reactor was undergoing testing that involved lifting each control rod a few inches and then lowering it again. For an unexplained reason, one of the 3 men pulled a control rod several feet, causing the reactor to go critical and boiling all the water in the core almost instantly. One man was impaled by the control rod in the ceiling, and the other 2 were killed from the resulting steam explosion and radiation. The only explanation was the operator was committing suicide. Edit. There was an alternate explanation that the rod stuck So the operator yanked the control rod, causing it to fly upward. Somehow, I believe every suicide bomber is unhinged. There was a guy in my town who had a heart attack in his car just as he was getting ready to pull into his garage. His car rammed the wall of the garage and his foot was stuck on the gas, so the tires continued to spin on the garage floor. The friction of the tires eventually started a fire that burned his house down. Either my great-uncles or the story of Russian torture. My great-uncles were all WW2 veterans who served in various theaters and famous battles throughout the war, such as the Battle of the Bulge, Iwo Jima and D-Day. They all survived the war, and when they got back they decided to celebrate by going on a fishing trip. So they were all fishing in a lake near my hometown, when a drunk boater came out of nowhere and rammed them. The boat sank, and killed all 4 of them. None of them knew how to swim. Which is fucking crazy. I didn't believe it until my father showed me the newspaper clipping. The Russian spoon torture is a weird one, not even sure if it's true, but I heard it from old substitute teacher I used to have who fought in Vietnam and allegedly worked with the Pentagon. Well, one day he was telling me about this Russian spoon torture, where they strap you to a chair in a dark sensory deprivation room, and rig up a spoon to repetitively tap you in the same spot, non-stop, apparently. Eventually you develop blood clots from the bruising which travel throughout your body until they reach your heart and kill you, and apparently it's very painful, and can drive you insane, but again, not sure how true or even how possible this is. I assume it would take a lot of tapping. First thing that comes to mind is the dude who worked at Boeing from the Mr. Hands video. Him and his pals would sneak onto someone's farm fairly regularly, from what I read, to get rammed by horses. This probably wouldn't surprise anyone who's ever seen a horse dick hard, but during one of the recordings of their adventures, a particularly well-endowed stallion gave this guy like 3 full balls deep pumps of like an arm's length of horse cock. Perforated the guy's colon. He delayed going to the hospital due to fear of being found out he was doing this shit, and I believe he died of peritonitis afterwards or something. They made a Sundance film about this whole story, if I recall correctly, as well. I think it was called Zoo. Can't make this shit up. Avoid looking up the video, called Mr. Hands for some reason, which captured that final fateful pounding. Some things can't be unseen. 2 scientists went to film bats in front of cave entrance. When tens of thousands of bats started to fly out, they started to shit. They shit all over those 2 guys, and I think 2 days later, they both died. https://www.tiktok.com/@warriors.guide/video/72766398117268741. What a way to go. I was the jury foreman at my city's coroner's court. We heard the events of a foundry worker who was operating a machine which was making sand cores for the foundry. The machine exerted pressure plates of a couple of tons pressure when operated. The machine had a fault, and this man was inspecting the inside of the mechanism when another operator started the machine in error. It crushed the guy's head. Safety mechanism failed. Death by misadventure was the verdict. My granddad's best mate fell into a mincer. Took a while to turn the machinery off. The poor man died a day or 2 later in hospital. Someone named Tiny Dinky Daffy was pancaked by a drunk dump truck driver. I've seen a few, all on a certain site that has a lot of gory deaths. But some stand out, like a worker on a huge lathe who reached over top and the lathe grabbed his clothing and not only sucked him tight, but then proceeded to spin him around at 100 RPM while smashing his body to pieces and then flinging parts all over the room. Took a long time for someone to notice what was happening, and by the time the lathe was shut down, there was very little left that was even recognizable as a human, just red dripping meat parts. Would not recommend. I bought a welding book. A welder who was assigned the job of cutting some 55-gallon oil drum in half to use as cattle troughs. He already cut two, and on the thread he was straddling it like a horse when it exploded. The force was so great it blew the welder nearly 50 feet straight up through the corrugated tin roof of the building, and outside he didn't make it.